Most businesses don't fail because of some huge disruption, a massive recession, or even because some new platform changed the marketing landscape. They fail because the business owner makes a wrong call. I know this personally because I built a coaching business to 6 figures in revenue and 100,000 followers on social media. And then I made a few decisions that led to making effectively no money for the next couple of years until I ultimately decided to shut it down. And the thing is, I was probably trying to solve the same problems that you are trying to solve in your business right now when I made these mistakes. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the 3 most significant reasons I think my last business failed and what I'm doing differently in this business to avoid those mistakes. And if we haven't met, I'm Samantha. I'm a 2-time small business owner, and now I'm a systems consultant for coaches, creatives, and service-based business owners to help them grow their business without working 60 to 80-hour weeks. And on this channel, we talk about all things small business, productivity and systems, AI and automation, finance, and the mindset it takes to run a successful business. So if any of those things are interesting to you, definitely love if you'd hit subscribe down below. I do need to make one quick caveat before we jump into some of the reasons that I think my last business failed, which is that I have a firm belief that the only times we truly fail are when we quit and when we don't learn from an experience. So when I say my last business here failed, I think it's important to distinguish that I don't think I failed, but I do have to be factual that that business did not survive and thrive long term. But if you are a business owner worried about you being a failure if your business doesn't seem to be working, let me just say from personal experience and lots of years of therapy, it's super important that you separate your identity from your business. And just because a business is not succeeding or working, or even if you have to do like I did and ultimately decide to shut a business down, does not mean that you are a failure. Now let's dive into some of the reasons that I think that business ultimately needed to get shut down, especially the things that were under my control as the business owner of that coaching business that I used to run. The first reason I think that business failed is that I started introducing secondary offers before I had really nailed my first one. The reason I did this was the same reason everybody does this, because I wanted to scale revenue. Honestly, if I look back, I definitely fell prey to a little bit of the business owner to business owner, business coaching, growth on social media craze of the early 2020s that was talking all about passive offers and scale your revenue and group programs and coaching courses. I was booked out with one-on-one coaching clients, and I wanted to find ways to scale my revenue, and I introduced a low cost but lower touch offer. And in retrospect, the business was not ready for that. I was working with a business coach at the time, and looking back, I wish that she had said to me, hey, I know you want to introduce these more scalable revenue products, but I would really encourage you to get some more reps in with your signature offer before you split your attention. But I also understand for her business model, I had partially hired her because I wanted to scale revenue by introducing new offers. And so it would have been hard for her to then say back to me, no, you actually aren't ready for what I sold you. I could get in a whole other discussion about the ethics of the coaching industry as a former coach, because I do think there are really amazing coaches out there making enormous impact, and I think there's also a little bit of a pyramid scheme problem going on. That's a whole nother video. But it really reminds me that the hardest part about being a business owner, especially a service-based small team or solo business owner, is not necessarily executing the thing that you've built your business around, but a lot of the decision making about figuring out when it's right to take another step, when you're ready for the next marketing tactic, the next offer. It can be really hard to say no to things that sound tempting, like scale your revenue or passive income. This is something I talk about with Exhale clients all the time, because they can often be tempted to try way too many things at once, whether that's making multiple improvements in the back end of their business, like upgrading their client deliverables at the same time as they're improving their task management system, or they want to introduce another marketing platform on top of the one that they're already running. And I almost always encourage them to focus really intentionally on one thing at a time, like a series of short sprints, rather than multitasking and trying to run things at the same time. Because I've lived the downside of when I split my attention to try to introduce this second offer, when I had not yet fully dialed in, not just what I was delivering in my signature offer, but how I was selling it, how I was upselling it, what I was doing with client testimonials, all of that good stuff that makes a system really repeatable was not locked in by the time I introduced this second offer that ultimately became a huge distraction. If you know yourself and that you're often tempted to do a few too many things at once, and you're curious how working with Exhale might help you make some of these decisions more strategically, the information is down in the link in our description. You can book a call to learn more. But knowing this mistake that I made in my first business has really shifted my approach to building Exhale, this business now. Because my long-term dream, I would love to be able to offer a low-cost offer for a new business owner who needs a little bit more guidance, especially in how to set up their systems and operations to scale more efficiently. But I know in my heart of hearts that I still want to make our signature offer, our bottleneck breakthrough, which is built for a more experienced business owner who's ready to bring in some outside support to actually be hands-on keyboard with them to streamline their operations and their client delivery and their marketing so that they can make more money in less time. I know that that signature offer can be even stronger. I know that we can dial in our marketing more, our sales strategy more. And so until I feel really, really solid about that offer, I am keeping those other like next possible offers, like that lower price point one, on the back burner until I know that we're super ready for it, so I don't make the same mistake I did in my coaching business. And if you're curious how I evaluate when I'm ready for a new marketing tactic or a new offer, stay tuned because I'm going to talk about more of that in number 3. It's important that you know I still struggle with, well, what if I'm missing out? What if I make the wrong call? Or what if I could be growing faster if I was on 3 marketing platforms instead of 2? These are very human, normal things that you deal with as a business owner who has to make all the decisions yourself. So don't beat yourself up, my friend. But now let's talk about the second reason that I think my last business failed. And that was I scaled my visibility before my conversion was really solid. There are so many business owners out there who want to grow their business. They want to bring in more clients and more money. And when you ask them, what do you think is getting in the way of scaling your revenue? They say, I don't have enough leads. I don't have enough visibility. I'm not getting enough views on all of these marketing platforms. And while visibility and views and getting in front of the right people is absolutely a part of growing your business, in my experience, scaling visibility before you're ready for it is a huge drain of time because you end up having a whole lot more like bad discovery calls or clients that end up asking for way more than you offered them originally, or it's a time suck in that you spend all this time marketing and your conversion rate is so much lower than you want it to be. I know this from personal experience because in my coaching business, I wanted more clients in the door, and so I put a ton of time and energy into scaling my content efforts on social media, especially TikTok, and it worked. I grew my following to over 100,000 people in 18 months, and a lot of that was on the back of 3 videos that got over 1 million views, including one that went to 5.2 million views. The problem? These viral videos did not convert even close to the rate of my typical video, and more than that, they brought in a ton of noise to my business. There were tons of followers that found me from those videos that ultimately weren't the type of people that I wanted to be working with, and so every time I posted videos after those viral videos, my engagement rate and just like the general algorithm sense of my content was way worse afterwards because I had attracted all of these people who weren't the right fit and who were skewing all the data accordingly. But even more painfully, the influx of people that came from those big videos and from the visibility that I had worked really hard for months and months to build made me feel like I was failing when that I couldn't even convert 1% of them into clients. It really shone a huge spotlight on the fact that, yeah, I could clearly bring visibility into the business, but my conversion process, what many people would consider their sales process of when somebody finds you, how effectively do you then convert them into a paying customer, was frankly not dialed in at all. It became very clear to me that I had prioritized any visibility over the right kind of visibility, and that's not a mistake I'm willing to make again. For me, this means that while I am still investing in my marketing, clearly because you're here watching a YouTube video that I created to market my business, I'm focusing way more on dialing in my style, my message, and what marketing actually converts for me before I go for any massive scale. Just as before, is it hard for me to feel sometimes like I'm not missing out? Yeah, of course it is. Do I sometimes doubt myself if things would look different if I had spent more time chasing views on social media? Yeah, I totally do. But I've seen the pain and regret on the other side of not staying focused on dialing in conversion first, and that helps me stay grounded and focus on the next thing. Which brings us to the third reason why I feel like my last business failed, which is that I changed tactics too quickly. There's lots of conversation that you hear about, especially like from the startup bro guru culture of like try fast, fail fast. And the insight is fair. Like we don't want to spend a bunch of time in the sort of sunk cost fallacy of just because we've invested in something, we need to stick with it to try to make it work. But I think most small business owners don't really have a very clear way to tell what is and isn't working. And so this fail fast mentality can lead them to quit things way before they see results. And as a result, they end up tool hopping or tactic hopping, never spending enough time in any one to actually get the results that they're looking for. But even before we consider the timing that it takes for you to have an accurate estimation of whether or not something works, we need to take a step backwards. Sometimes this impatience or need for a change comes from the fact that the business owner is just actually not enjoying running their business, and they're looking to find a reason anywhere they can find it to explain this sort of lingering dissatisfaction. This one can be sneaky, and I'm going to dive into this a little bit more in a bit because it's got a little more nuance to it. But I think many business owners make incorrect assumptions as to whether or not something is working, even in specific situations, like whether their content strategy on social media is working or how to drive traffic to their website via SEO, just based on this subjective assessment of whether it feels like it's working. And the big thing that they're using to judge whether it feels like it's working is whether they're seeing results. They're missing more subtle signs that happen before those real breakthrough moments, like an increase in interested DMs, even if it isn't quite yet looking to booking calls, or more substantive comments than you were seeing before from people that actually look to be your ideal client versus just a looky looker. Most business owners miss these more subtle signals that the system might actually be working, it's just taking longer than they thought. Which brings us back to the timing piece. I was super vulnerable to this. When I introduced a new offer, like I mentioned before, I wanted it to sell as soon as it was released. When I implemented a new content strategy, I was expecting to see a notable uptick in website traffic within weeks to determine whether the strategy was working or not. And what I came to learn over the years of running that business was that a lot of the enormous growth that you see from people bragging about things like I did earlier in this video, 100,000 followers in 18 months, does not look like a slow climb towards their result, but actually a long period of not a whole lot happening and then a sudden spike at the end. I actually talk way more about this sort of the growth curve of many marketing metrics in this video here. But many business owners, if you're like me, who just thinks that you're supposed to see results faster than you are, then you're constantly feeling like it's failing because you've tried something and seen no results. And then you can be really vulnerable, like I was, to oh, okay, let me jump to the next thing. Let me try this next tactic, or maybe I need to tweak this more. And out of my own confusion and impatience, I was just pulling the plug too quickly on something. So for Exhale, I have a dialed in analytics dashboard. So to look for those subtle signals of things that might be happening a little bit behind the scenes that I know are eventually going to compound into the results that I want for myself. I also make promises to myself and keep them to stick with processes long enough to see the results. So for example, for YouTube, I committed to posting weekly for 6 months before I did make any assessments as to whether or not YouTube is working for me. And this is probably the most common combo I have with service-based business owners, which is about how to decide when your marketing isn't working. And I know my answer is not the most comforting, but I really believe it in my soul that most business owners are trying to make assessments on whether their marketing is working when they haven't even had half the amount of reps to have any sort of database conclusion about whether or not something is working. And all this attempt to try to rush the process to not waste time is actually wasting way more time because they're jumping from one tactic to another, never giving anything time enough to see results. And I know I told you that there were 3 reasons that I thought my business failed, but there's a little bit of a bonus one for you, just related to that piece that I talked about earlier about when somebody may be feeling like something isn't working actually because they're just not enjoying running their business anymore. Well, this was certainly the case in my last business because around year 2 to 3, I started to realize that I actually really didn't like being a coach. But this mistake, when I look back, wasn't necessarily a flaw in my execution of running the business like these other 3 were. It was more of a flaw in my selection of the type of business that I want to run. And I told way more about that journey and realization in this video up here. So if you want to hear that full backstory, I definitely recommend you check that one out. Running a business really can be lonely. All the decisions fall to you and you're trying to figure out, is the issue marketing, sales, is it your web design, is it your offer structure, or is it your time management because you're constantly drowning in emails trying to keep up with the business that you're already doing, which keeps you from being able to spend time in your growth. If this sounds like you, Exhale works with service-based business owners to try to get them out from under the flood of admin and operational work behind the scenes of their business so they actually have time to be in that CEO mindset to build towards the growth of their business without having to commit to 60 to 80-hour weeks. If you're curious about working with us, I would love if you head to the description or bio and click to book a call to learn more. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.